Hello, fellow golfers. Coach Pete Dooley here. I'm a golf instructor in the San Jose area. I'm a level 5 certified right balance fitter, and I'm also the wellness golf coach at LinkedIn here in San Jose. I'm here at one of my favorite spots, the Pacific Ocean, at the beach right near my home here in Aptos, California. And I gotta tell you, it's beautiful, it's big, and there is a lot of it. You know, there's a lot of information out there about the golf swing, and it can be confusing. So if you feel that you're a little frustrated with some of your past instruction, or you may be trying to do it on your own and you feel you've plateaued, well, we have something that'll help you out with our full swing evaluation. You see, when we do any athletic endeavor, the muscles have got to be at ease, relaxed, and tension-free, and most importantly, we need to be in balance. Everything we do in our evaluation and our custom swing for you is designed on the body's levers and its balance. This is your blueprint, your swing. It's applicable to you, not somebody else's methodology. So I want you to stay with me here. We're going to take you through some of the highlights of what we do in a swing evaluation. Okay, so measuring the body, we start with our calipers that are engineered. They're very precise with the measurement up across your shoulders. Here's Doc Wright and one of his students in the lab on the left. And then we measure the widest part of your body down just below your shoulder blades on kind of the side of your triceps. And what that does is it gives us the ability, with the information of your height, your width of your shoulders, and your shoe size and your body weight. Doc is a formula that we create 3 stance widths for the lower and the middle and upper core. And you'll see here on the chart, the low is blue, the mid is black, and the upper is red. There's 3 primary regions of the core, low, mid, and upper, and then there's 3 sub-regions, and they're numbered 1 through 9. Then we move further along and measure your angles. We call these power angles, which would be when you're in your proper stance and in your proper core measurements. We'll be able to determine these power angles, which is this thigh measurement. Now, this is a mid-core golfer here, so when we go further down into the presentation, you'll see that the torso, or the primary tilt forward, varies from core. The lower core golfer will be symmetrical. The mid-core golfer will have slightly more forward lean from the hips up, and the upper core golfer will even lean more forward, but the thigh angle will remain constant with this arm angle here on the right. And the arm angle or power angle is more severe or just greater when it's a lower core, not as much when you're a mid-core, and less when you're an upper core, and you'll see how that influences grip, shaft lean, and release later on. So when we're in alignment, our line of force is straight, it's square. That's this diagram on the left. Over here, as we go over to the right, you'll see that this would be hips that would be closed, and it's swinging more to the right, the line, and then when the hips are open, it creates more of a left alignment. So the alignment and the core and the grip all come into play to keeping our body in balance. You know, to use a paraphrase from Doc Wright, that nature knows no right or wrong, only balance and imbalance, and that's what we're doing here for you during this evaluation in your personal bio screen. We also know that the energy comes from the ground, and it's called ground force reaction. And these are some diagrams that were done by Dr. Giambetti with a professional golfer, Lori Rinker. And she's a mid-core golfer, so you're going to see all 3 of these graphs are the pink on the top is the horizontal, the yellow in the middle is the rotational, and the blue on the bottom is the vertical. And Dr. Scott Lynn came up with a simple way to to term these. Instead of linear or horizontal force, we call it glide now, and torque or rotational force is spin. Think of an ice skater spinning, and our vertical force is launch. Basically, you're jumping. And here's just some simple diagrams, but the simple act of jumping rope is going into the ground and up, and that motion is in our golf swing. It'll be more prevalent when you jump or your vertical force with the upper core golfer. And these are these Scottish guys. These guys are amazing. They pick up these logs, and you see the guy bending down, so now he's going into the ground to create load, and he's going to explode up and throw that pole down the field. That's ground force. The hammer thrower, same thing. There's rotational, okay, not a lot of horizontal, a little bit on the release, but mostly horizontal and vertical. With this girl here, she's going to let it rip. There's another one of these Scottish guys throwing their hammer throw. And then the rotational force, you could think of an ice skater when they're in that fast twirl. Okay, so just back to what we're able to do is this chart of Laurie Rinker here is a mid-core golfer, and a mid-core golfer has a tendency to use all three, glide, spin, and launch equally, whereas the upper core golfer would have hardly any horizontal. There's a little in everybody's upper core motion, but typically we'll have spin and a lot of launch. And conversely, the linear golfer or the lower core golfer will have a lot more glide and a bunch of rotation into impact with not as much jump. They have that extending down the line release. Okay, so when we're doing our analysis and getting your body's measurements, we're able to determine your core. And when we can determine your core, we can pin down where your power spots are on your hand and how you'll hold the club. And the reason we call it a power spot is it's based on the player's power angle. And the way you set up at address is the way we want that club to fit in your hand. And on the left here is the right hand of a right-handed golfer. The blue would represent a lower core, the black a mid, and the red an upper. So you can see that the club will get deeper into the fingers of the right hand for the lower core player, and then on his or her left hand you'll see it's more in the middle of the last knuckle. And on the extreme side would be the upper core, where the club pressure point in the right hand is more below the first knuckle, and if you look at the left hand, it's below the first knuckle and still on the same heel pad pressure point. And then the mid golfer, which is our hybrid, will be more on that crease in your mid knuckle, and the same on the right hand. Now there's variations, and we're not forcing you into any core. For example, I'm 62 years old now, and I'm a mid-core golfer, but I've migrated towards an upper-core golfer because it's just easier on my body and I can use my arms more. So I've been developing my upper core, and I'm hitting it as far as ever and much more reliable compression. So if you have injuries, we can tailor make it for you. It's just these give us a blueprint to follow, so it becomes your motion, your swing, and you don't have to really think about it. And you're not going down rabbit holes with all the information that's out there, just going in the wrong direction. And some of the tendencies will be with the lower core player, the thumb will be shorter, and the mid-core golfer, the thumb has a tendency to be more of a middle length thumb and a long thumb on the upper core. And this has a lot to do with wrist set, which we'll talk about a little bit down the line here. And we can test your grip and stance, and it's easy for you to do at home as well. Here on the left, Doc Wright intentionally getting out of the proper stance, and you'll see that his hips open with the diagram there on the left. And when you're in your proper stance and proper grip, you look at Doc's student here, the club is perfectly horizontal, and when you do this at home, this will take place. And then as the student got out of the stance width, you'll see that the club drops down and that's not in balance. So those are simple tests. Once we've pinned down your core, your stance widths, we have another ground force test we do. On the left, Doc is pushing up and the player is just making a downward motion with the club, and you can't move him. He's like a rock. And on the right, when you're out of balance in the improper stance width, you won't be able to move at all. He'll just move you. You'll be moved right out of your position. You have no stability. Now we're going to show you some face-on pictures of some of the tendencies of the different core players. These are elite tour players, but this comes to fruition for you as well, just for us common golfers. It's just a way for you to identify, because there's so much information out there, it can be confusing, and you're not going to have to think about it anymore. We're going to dial you right in. So this is Dustin Johnson on the left. You'll notice that the lower core player has much more shaft lean, a much stronger grip. Look at the V's of his right hand, or his trail hand, and how many knuckles are showing in the left hand, and more tilt of the shoulders. And this player will be more level at the top. There won't be as much shoulder tilt, and the ball position is typically more forward. They have more of an extending release. We'll talk about that in a minute as well. Here's an elite mid-core player, Ernie Els, and you can see that the V of his trail hand is neutral, maybe slightly right of the chin, which is commonly taught. I mean, it's a great place to start. It's not bad advice. It's just that, is it really applicable to you for you to max out your best golf? And maybe a couple knuckles showing with the neutral left hand. And the ball is forward, but not as far forward as DJ. Now, these guys all hit up on it, and it looks like Ernie has a 3-wood here, so the ball position with the T-ball, they're all hitting up, and it's going to be more forward. But with their irons, you'll see ball position with the lower core player being more forward just because of their release pattern, more extending and maintaining posture longer. Patrick Reed, an upper core player, great player, much more neutral grip, and the shoulders are much more level. He will have more tilt at the top of his swing, and he'll have more armpit showing, more of a Jack Nicklaus flying type of elbow. We'll see that in a minute. So we're able to just pin it down and get you where you belong. And we talked about the thumb length of short, medium, long earlier. Here's DJ with what we would call more of a short thumb. He's not releasing it, hinging it his wrist as soon as Patrick Reed here on the right. This middle picture doesn't really do justice to the mid-core player, but they set it in between being late and early by core. So at the top of the swing, you'll see that this, what we call the center of mass, changes by core. And it's okay not to move to your right and move to your left as much as some players, or you might feel like you're staying forward. This is not a bad thing. It's just where your mass is going to go based on your biomechanics. So you see the plumb line through Dustin Johnson's center of his stance up through. There's more mass towards his rear foot or rear part of his swing than there is forward, and that's just one of the traits. And that's that horizontal glide that's more prevalent with the lower core player. And then here's mid-core player Ernie Els. If you draw the line right through the middle of his stance up through his body, it's pretty equal, pretty balanced. And they use all three, the mid-core. They've got the horizontal, the rotational, and the vertical jump, the upward part. Now, the upper core player is the other end of the spectrum from the lower core player here, Patrick Reed. You can see the plumb line. There's more mass target side, and that's just going to be the way it will be for an upper core player. It's not a bad thing. They're all correct. It's just which one is for you. So as we move further down, we talk a little bit about balance, because that's what we're always trying to do in any athletic endeavor. The pressure on the ground is going to vary from core. The lower core player will have more pressure under their feet, more heel side of the arch of your foot. The mid-core player is more just in the middle of your arches, just under your balls of your feet. And then you'll see the upper core in red, where the pressure of the ground is more towards the balls of the feet. once again, they're all correct. It's just which one is for you. We have ways of demonstrating this too. It's pretty cool. We'll show you how it's easy for you to find it and get a feel for it, so when you're practicing at home. And you can do a lot of this stuff at home to really get comfortable with getting set up, and once you do it, you own it and you don't even think about it. So the delivery is matched by core as well, or there's commonalities by core. You can see the under, we call this an under delivery, the under golfer, which is going to have an extending release. If you look at the palm of DJ's hand here, it's facing more skyward, and his hands are way forward off his left thigh. And then you'll have Jason Day, a mid-core player, elite golfer. This is your side-on golfer delivery, where if you look at the palm of his hand, it's facing more down the target line. And then there's a covering release of Patrick Reed used here again, where you can see there's more release. He's starting to definitely extend the club sooner. It's not that he doesn't have lag, it's just a different release. They're getting rid of it quicker, so it doesn't mean he won't hit it as far. DJ is a long hitter. He just happens to be a lower core in this diagram, but if you look at some of your long drive guys, there's upper core players that absolutely murder it. So it doesn't influence you that if you're upper core, you won't hit it far. It's just where you're going to be because of your biomechanics. And then as we get into the release part from front-on view of the three core players, this is the extending release or extension release of Paula Creamer, an elite low core player. You notice the shaft is more into her middle of her torso, and she's still in her posture. And then the mid-core player, Ernie Els, is what we call a cornering release. And you'll notice at this club, you see the arrow there on the bottom, it's starting to work left sooner. It's not going to extend down the line as long. And he's got all three components. He's got a lot of vertical and a lot of rotation, and his hips will be opened at impact, not as much as the lower core player, which we'll see from down the line. And on your right is Phil Mickelson, an upper core player, and this is more of a what we call a covering release. He's going to get rid of the club sooner, and if you look at the crisscross of his forearms, he's released the club sooner. Doesn't mean anything is bad. He's not going to be as consistent ball striker. It's just how you release the club. Okay, so we have extension, the lower core, cornering, the mid-core, and then the covering release of the upper core player. And then there's hybrids. A lot of you are going to fall in between, so don't worry about it. We'll pin you down and get you right where you need to be. So we're going to look at the same commonalities of the different cores from down the line now. On the left is DJ, and the middle is Ernie, and Patrick Reed again on the right. You'll notice at address, the shaft plane line is more towards the hip line, or at or below the belt buckle with a lower core player. You won't see as much differential here at address as you will be at impact. The mid-core player, Ernie Els, it's a little more above his belt buckle, and then the upper core player, Patrick Reed, much more through the torso. This will really show up at impact, which you'll see here in a minute. So at the top, here's lower core player Paula Creamer, and this is demonstrating that under golfer, which is the extending release. You could see that she could be, you hear some teachers talk about getting under the waiter tray. Well, that would be applicable for you if you're a lower core player. You could do that. And if you look at the mid-core player, Adam Scott, more of a side-on to side cover type of player, the palm is facing more horizontal, not up at the sky as much. And then over here to Patrick Reed, if you look at the arrow of the upper core player's tendencies, it's going to be much more horizontal, and they're much more into the height dimension. Now, it's not bad, once again, to be either one. It's just where you're going to be based on how your body's built. And then there's some commonalities as well as far as delivery. You'll see a lot of pictures of Hogan, and they're slotting the club on his right forearm. Well, that's the case for most lower core players, the good ones. But look at Ernie Els here, the mid-core player. It's much more into the middle of his bicep. So Hall of Famer, and you wouldn't want to tell him to get the club shallower. It's just how he wants to release those angles. And then upper core player, lefty Phil Mickelson, it's up higher, up on the bottom of his shoulder. Okay? So that's just how it will be for you based on your core. They're all correct. Hall of Fame is filled with them all. Which one's for you? That's what we're going to find out. And then we get into the delivery impact, and now you're going to see the shaft angle of the lower core player that I mentioned before, how prevalent it is right through Paula's hip line, Rory more mid as a mid-core player, and then an upper core player, Buwikli, much more torso, playing with his club into the impact. And then here's your release down the line of the core players. Here's our extending release. Notice the club head well outside of DJ's hands. And your mid-core player, the cornering release, notice the hands are going left. You can still see the club just out here to the right a little bit. And that's a position that's, correct for that mid-core player, that cornering release. And that would be side-to-side cover type of release. And then your upper core player, you'll see you don't see the club because it's really released earlier. You'll see the butt of the club, and that's the covering type of release that you'll see post-impact. So we don't want to change that. We just want to let you know that's where you're going to be, if that's where you belong, and it'll be really good for you. So I want to thank you all for taking the time to watch the video. I hope you really enjoyed it. And if you're serious about owning your own swing, please come see me. I can get you to the promised land. I'd really like to thank Doc Wright for letting me use his findings, graphs, and pictures. And you can go to his website here. The information's below. And he has a lot of information on YouTube. And always feel free to call me anytime if you have any questions, and Doc will always take your call as well. My contact information is here. I look forward to hearing from you, and as always, keep it in the short grass. I want to thank all of you for taking the time to come to my website. I look forward to hearing from you in the very near future. Until then, be sure to keep it in the short grass. Coach Pete Dooley, take care.